All right, we're on. I'm super excited for this particular episode of the Unlearning Project podcast because for the very first time, actually, we have a special guest. For like 27 episodes, it's been Mark and Christine, and we brought on somebody to be a part of our Unlearning Project family today because in this relationship-focused series, this is a very important topic that we're going to dive into.
Yeah. Super excited to have you here, Tia. Tia, you'll have to tell me how to pronounce your last name properly because I think I've pronounced it like 5.
Evagelou.
Evagelou. Awesome.
So awesome last name. Yeah. So we were at a dinner event in Toronto months ago, and I'm losing track of time with this whole COVID thing at this point. So I think
it was like November. Yeah.
Yeah. Was it really November? It was last year already. Okay. So this was a longer time ago than I thought. So I had just flown into Toronto. Christine had this dinner she was going to. She bought me a ticket to go with. Tia was there, and we all happened to be sitting around the same table roughly. And she got my attention when she started talking about being an intimacy coach or a sex coach. And so now I'm listening. Now you've got my attention because this is something not only that obviously I'm interested in, but this is a big part of what we're interested in helping people with from an unlearning standpoint. So Tia, I'm super glad that you're here with us on the show.
It is amazing to be here. And actually, correction, it was January, the dinner that we met at.
It was January.
Yes. My apologies. But it was like an instant connection when I met you two both. And it's when you asked me to participate in this, it was like a hands down no-brainer. So thank you for having me.
I'm so excited to do this because we were actually having this conversation driving back from Sedona as we were really dialing into, what is the School of Unlearning about? What is this whole Unlearning project? And where are people coming from into this tribe with? And we were like, okay, his whole process started when he had massive relationship issues because you get to a point where you just can't handle it anymore, right? And same for me. I got to the point where I was just like cycling shit relationship after shit relationship, divorce, long, I was like a serial monogamist. And everything was failing epically. And I just got to the point where I was like, what the hell is going on? Like all the personal development I've done, all the things, it doesn't seem to translate to this relationship side. And so it's funny because we're like, it's so true. Like so many our people have come in because of like really struggling. And it seems to be the catalyst that it hits so close to home that really drives people into really going deep and doing the inner work. So, and it's such a hot topic. So I'm going to just ask you, like, you have such an awesome story. Tell us a little bit of your background. I was reading it and I'm like, oh my God, I can relate so much. So do tell us your backstory before I
there's a couple things that, when you talk about the personal development and work we do, and it's really about that whole thing of moving forward. We want to go forward and be this better person and be this, but it's interesting when it comes to relationship, I find it's a going backwards, right? It's to our child, to how we were parented, to how we were conditioned. And it's through that awareness that we're able to shine light on creating healthier relationships in our lives, right? So just wanted to identify that piece because I've been there and I think all of us go through that. I think the dysfunctional relationships we draw in are true teachers just to remind us of where the unlearning needs to take place, right? So when we identify with that and realize the experience is a teacher and an invitation, it offers so much more for us to expand and step into just with a greater clarity and confidence. So going back to my story, how far back do you want to go?
Well, I love the fact that you said, I married an alpha man.
Oh, yes. Okay. Yeah. So, it's interesting. So even growing up as a young child, I came from parents that divorced at a very young age, very dysfunctional. And my father was that very alpha male himself. And it's interesting as a child that you're like, you can say, I don't want this, I don't want that. in a relationship when you get older, but then that's the one thing you seem to draw in, everything that you didn't want, right? But when we understand, in our heads, we can say, I want A, B, C, and D, but the body's inherent familiarity is over here with what you had. So until you work through that, like the body knows, like there's a somatic experience the body has. The body knows how to function in the chaos. It knows what to do. You put me in the nice Prince Charming guy that treats me like a queen and puts me on a pedestal. I'm like, what the F, right? Like, I don't know how to do, I'm not attracted to it, or I'm going to sabotage it. Something's going to happen because the comfort of how the body knows how to engage in is with the chaos, right? So again, that's a piece of awareness and undoing that has to take place. So with me, going through that process and not having that consciousness around those pieces, I married an alpha male. I was, and it's, the dating was great. And I was like, okay, I'm a high powered woman. This is a high powered man. We're a great team. But it just eventually started shifting, like the underlying pieces that people don't see, like it's like, okay, you have this profile in the public eye, but behind the scenes, there's this other side of engagement on an intimate level. Right. And we all have these sides to us in intimacy, but it's how does it play out? And, just our sex life, let's say, started shifting from this playful dynamic, hot experience in dating to shift more monotonous and in the bedroom and less frequent, to when we got married, it was something else, even less. And then when you had a child, it was like, oh, I can't even have sex with you. And what was hard about that is like at the times when you're going through so much transition as a woman and you want your partner to really help you, remind you you're still a woman and that you're still sexy and feeling back into that femininity, my partner couldn't. And not that it was intentional, it was just his capacity of his own conditioning and traumas and relationship to the female being like, well, I know how to have sex with the girlfriend. I don't know how to have sex with the wife the same way. I don't know how to have that same passion, playful intensity and know it's okay, right?
Such an interesting dynamic. That's that shift that happens,
Yes.
But,
and then here you are talking about an alpha male, but then like we all have our own wounds, right? And his wounds played out into, infidelity, gambling. And there was a long period, there's periods where I'd identify it and it'd be like, oh, you're making things up. Oh, it's in your head. And you're overreacting. And you really start doubting yourself, being like, oh, maybe I am, right? And eventually, it came out that there was this different lifestyle happening aside from our marriage. And when confronted, at the end of the day, he chose the lifestyle over our marriage. And that, you're going through the anger, the sadness, the bitterness, like everything. But it was through that experience, I'm even questioning who I am, even as a woman. I couldn't even keep my marriage. I couldn't keep my partner interested in me in that capacity. But then I'm like, but I thought I was a good wife. I was loyal. I was going through stressful too. I stayed committed. I was taking care of the home. I was taking care of our family. So you're just questioning everything, your condition. So that really took me on the journey of my sexuality path. Like I've been doing personal growth since I was 12, but it was in the past, like from that divorce, that it really had me question my femininity, my sexuality. And through that, I really started developing or learning how to develop a deep love affair with myself, right?
I love that she said that. We literally just talked about this on a previous podcast. So I love that you said that. That's so good.
Well, it is really true. And the more I started to connect and be in relationship to myself and really fall in love with the parts of myself, the good and the bad, I started creating different relationships in my life. I had more to give. It wasn't like I needed somebody to, oh, I need that person because I want to feel loved. I need that person because I want to feel attractive. It was like, I'm loved, I'm attractive, I'm healthy. And now I can have somebody meet me there. I can cup runneth over. I can give from that place, right? So that really started shifting a lot with me. And at the same time, I had this young girl, like my little daughter, watching me go through conflict and chaos and transition. And who did I want to model for her as a woman
Yes.
through all this, right? So I, when my parents divorced when I was younger, it was very difficult. So when I was going through this divorce, my dad had an affair too. So he couldn't support me because he would have to look at himself. So he was kind of saying, oh, just turn the other cheek, it will pass, it's a phase. Whereas my mom had glazed eyes of all the things she didn't do in handling her. So she's like, you gotta do this, you gotta do this, whatever. So I'm like, I had to really isolate from everybody to define and discover, who am I and who do I want to be in all this, right? So that's how it, started. And then there was a period through the divorce. The divorce was very high conflict. It took, even though we settled the divorce 2 years in, after we separated, we were in court for one reason or another for 8-9 years. And that took its toll. And I got really sick to a point where I was bedridden, and my body was choosing to live or die. And I had to make some serious life choices. So again, it was about surrendering into the body, because here's this alpha woman, and I'm not saying I'm alpha, like I'm a AAA, and then you have my body put me out.
Alpha stuff in a bit, because it's come up a lot, and I think it's good that we dive into that. But yeah, go on, keep going.
Which about the health part?
No, the alpha thing, but we'll come back.
Yeah. Okay. So here, my body puts me out. I'm trying to figure out, I'm going through high conflict divorce, figuring out, I'm working at a family business in construction that's going through its own turbulence and chaos. And my body shuts down on me. And I had to give up every role in my life. And I just said, please do not take away Mother.
Yeah.
And it was through surrendering to my body. Like every time I would fight it, it would kick me out and put me in bed and said, okay, I'm putting you out 3 days. You want to try it again? I'll put you out a week. And then when I started softening and listening and trusting, I didn't even know the language of how to do that, let alone relate to it. But it actually allowed me to start operating from a completely different space. Like before I actually got sick, there were, I'm going to say there were remnants of this starting to come in, because here I was in a general contracting business with my father. Again, I'm used to leading from the masculine. We're taught, meet the patriarch, right?
Yeah, totally. Right.
And then I said, what is it like to lead from the feminine? As I'm learning, we're natural creators, protectors, nurturers, collaborators. And when we're operating from these places, and we fall into that natural flow of leadership from this essence, it really allows the people around us to thrive in their natural essence, because we're leading from our natural essence. So I started getting those planted moments, and even my dynamics with my dad or the workers or the clients completely shifted in very healthy and positive ways. So when I got sick and was kind of remembering these pieces along the way that started taking place, they just allowed for greater invitations to drop in. So it was through that time, because as much as I was letting go, for me, I said, okay, I'm in bed. I can't do a lot. So I might as well do my certification, right? In something that I've been investing so much time and money in, and allow to contribute on a greater scale with this. So that's how I ended up there. So for the past few years, this has been my path, and I've just been getting more clear and honing in on who exactly I want to work with. And as I've been working with people, it's just this real calling for me of working with the alpha individual, because there's two things there. One, through the experience, it's allowed me to really understand, even with my ex, he was hurting too. He had his own wounds and his own capacity. And I was able, through this work, to shift from a place of judgment and criticism to compassion and acceptance for his path. And also, I couldn't I'm going to say save my marriage or do this work with him. But with alpha individuals, a lot of our reach to do great things and attach to the results and driven is because that's also a form of trauma too, right? We divert it into that. So it's just a lot that my whole upbringing, my whole experience has been in relationship to that in one form or another, as a child, as a wife, as an entrepreneur, as an alpha individual myself. So it just has become a very tender space for me to offer support, because I don't think it's an area that we feel in the place of alpha positions that there's space for surrender and intimacy in a healthy way.
Oh man, you are hitting it on the nail, because I can totally, I'm like, yes, yep, that too. I mean, I'm hearing your story, and it's like, I was same thing, right? Very similar in terms of the upbringing, where performance is where you got the love. If you performed and you were beautiful and you just go and you achieved, then praises from daddy, praises from society, and you just get this internal, like you said, the home, right? To the home, yeah. The DNA is like, I have to always be on edge, driving. And it's like this addiction to adrenaline and chaos is exactly what you said. And I can totally relate. I'm interested, just real quick, to dive into the whole, we say the word alpha a lot, right? Like that comes up so much, and it's like sometimes it has a positive connotation and a negative. And so we say, and even we've been to events where they're like, are you an alpha woman and an alpha man? And yes. And so it's like, and I feel like you get to a point where initially you're like, yeah, and then you're like, no, I don't want to be that. And then all of a sudden you're like, yeah. So yeah. Is it possible, is it possible to be a really thriving alpha man, alpha woman? What does that even mean?
Well, I absolutely think it is. And a friend of mine, we were having this discussion, and he kind of expanded into beyond the alphas, the omega individual, who was looking for the peace, the surrender, the different way of doing things. So I said, I really like that. I like that. Yeah. So again, it's not taking away or shaming. And I think alpha, again, it's a label, it's an identity just to associate to. Just like everything has its good, it also has its shadow. So, it's just deciding the space you want to live into that, and holding that with intention. I don't think there's anything wrong being an alpha individual. But it's owning the place of here are the pluses about it, and here are the minuses. The more I train myself or get into a more intimate relationship of that part of myself, I'm able to nurture the parts of me I want to expand and grow. And I get to pull out the weeds of the part that really don't serve me in the way that have limited the way I've been functioning up until now, let's say.
I really like that omega bit. The omega bit is good. And because it really is giving yourself permission to love all the parts, like you said, the great, the white, the light parts, and the darkness, right? And to yes. Really recognize, there is a shadow side to this, and if I can become aware of them.
But there's shadow sides to all aspects of us, right? Mm-hmm. So the more we give acceptance and just permission, the more it's we're embodying our whole essence more fully, whatever aspect we're functioning from.
Mm-hmm. I want to dive into something that you mentioned a little bit earlier, Tia. when you brought up the word somatic, right? So we're thinking about like somatic. So it's like, it's in us, right? The phrase that's been coming up a lot lately is the issues are in the tissues.
Mm.
So, I know in my previous relationship, I'm very clear. And I think I even mentioned it in an early podcast in this, in some of the early episodes, that I'm very clear on the fact that I married my father, right? Like I didn't marry my dad, but I mean, like I got married to
Yeah.
someone who represented all the things that, he was, where a lot of good stuff, but a lot of like, nothing's ever good enough. There's always like another level. And then you were, if you weren't meeting certain standards, and you were shut out, shut down, right? Put out, that kind of thing. And that was very much how I grew up. And I just started, I manifested that in my adult life. So could you dive into that a little bit for us? So how is, maybe not how does it happen, but so how are those things continuing to show up now that are affecting our ability to be intimate, our sex life, our relationships in general? Maybe just dive into that and give us some take homes on that piece.
So you're so you're asking me, why is it that we continue to gravitate to people that represent these parts of our, yes?
That's exactly what I meant.
Okay. All right. So a lot of it is, in my perspective, it's just our unfinished business, right? Like as children, we didn't have the tools, strategies, intelligence, awareness to be able to solve it. We had the innate, inherent ability to protect it. So we go into our defenses and what we needed to do to survive. But as we get older, we're going to get invited into relationships that allow us to work it through, right? So and it's like, that's part of the completion process, right? You're not going to be able to go into that ideal relationship that you want if that business is still residing in you at some level, even if it's at unconscious, even if it's somatic, right?
I love that you said that. We get invited, I wrote that down, into relationships that allow us to work it through. Because I literally had this conversation with someone the other day. She goes, I'm like a magnet for emotionally unavailable men.
Oh my God. Okay. So that's been me up until now. I would attract emotionally unavailable men. Like, I'm like, how is it? Like, I'm so, conscious, and I'm so about into the going deep and going intimate, but it helped me through exploring it more, as realizing how available am I being to myself. Right.
Yes.
And I was being emotionally unavailable to myself because I consume myself with the busyness. Like that's my, I'm going to say, default coping strategy. Stay busy, stay busy, stay busy. Even though I love to feel and I love to go deep, this is just my pattern that I'm now undoing. And as I've been undoing it, just the type of relationships I've been drawing in have just shifted immensely. But going back to, again, with our partners, like, Mark, I say that specifically even from my own experience, because I can look back at my relationship with my ex and say my ex has been my greatest teacher. I see the gifts I would not otherwise have gained had I not had the relationship, had I not had the turmoil, have I not had all the challenges that helped me identify what my true potential is. But it's being willing, but it's being willing to see it as such.
Yes.
Right.
Yeah.
And that's for the listeners, like that, as we walk through this example, this is like the essence of unlearning, right? So
Yeah.
The world has programmed us to believe like we're just always moving forward. We have to add more shit on in order to understand what happened, right? It's like I got to go read another book in order to understand like why my relationships are showing up this way, right? Or I got to go read another book in order to understand like why my business is operating this way, or so I'm taking on more, but I haven't really dealt with the full program. And so these things, like life gives us these gifts, and I told this to many people. I mean, that relationship, I owe like what Christine and I have.
Yes.
And don't you feel
to that
like
relationship, because had that not, like I never would have faced the inner stuff.
You wouldn't have been ready for this had you not done that.
Exactly.
Never,
Absolutely.
never. We would have asked for it and then wouldn't have known what to do with
We
it.
fucked it all up.
Yeah. And another piece I just want to mention when you talk about the unlearning and whatever, and all these books to read, or the other, therapists or the coaches, a big piece in this unlearning is just dropping into the body. The body has so much wisdom. So even a practice that I've been implementing, I spend 15 minutes every morning and every night on the floor, sprawled out, just dropping deeper and deeper into the surrender of my own body. What do you want to tell me? What do you want me to know? And I put my hand on my womb, because the womb of the creation, and just imagine going deeper and deeper and deeper into that. And it's wisdom. Like, our body has inherent wisdom.
Yes, it does. And I love the fact that you're sharing that as being in the health industry for 20 years and forever trying to get people to stop and just pay attention and listen and say, your body knows exactly what it needs for food. It knows exactly what it needs for rest, but we're so conditioned to not listen to our bodies. And I think, again, this is where it's so interesting when it starts to shift over into like not trusting our own body, let alone trusting our body with anyone else, so there's so much of that. I mean, we can go down a whole rabbit hole there, but it's scary to be with your body for a lot. I was shocked for so many years to see how disconnected.
And then you want somebody else to be intimate with you or to connect with you, but yet look at what you're not doing with yourself. So the work you're doing with that in itself is just so important, because we live in a culture and a society in a world that's all about it's on the outside. Don't trust yourself. You need the next thing. And when you have people like us saying, no, ask inward, start, that little nudge you got, how can you turn up that volume? That little feeling that reminded you not to go there, not to, see that person again. Mm-hmm. And the one you listen to, what did that feel like? And you help them reconnect to the sensations of that guidance and slowly start turning it up. The relationship of confidence, empowerment, of change people start making in the world, because they're actually, wow, I'm dialed in to my own core essence. And that's untouchable.
Totally is. And I'm hearing it's really like a lot of trust. It's trust your body, trust source. And then like trust is such a massive issue.
Well, I say the biggest orgasmic experience is, getting intimate with your most authentic self. And when you taste that, it's incredible.
Yeah. So good. Yeah, it's so good. So I want to jump into like this intimacy thing, because really there's, which we've been talking about that, but this feeling that so many, I know Mark and I have both felt this. We've spoken to our clients who are either still in this or whatever, is that feeling of like you're laying in bed next to someone, you have this warm body next to you, but you're so freaking alone. Mm-hmm. Like that feeling rejected, and like there's no intimacy, and there's just like this total disconnect. It really was one of the most if not the most painful emotion I've ever felt. Certainly was definitely there, right? When you feel sort of like, what is going on? Am I invisible? It's almost like you're totally unseeing, it can feel that way. I don't know. And so we've both been there. We have our journeys. I'm just curious, we've talked about this, but how does a couple, like I can think of a couple people that we're working with right now, that's just like this Grand Canyon is there. And there is actually a desire to improve the relationship, but it seems like no one can bridge the gap. Like it's just standstill. So where does somebody start with, like, really, if there is a desire in a relationship to fix it or resolve? I don't want to use the word fix, that's not the right word, but or is it just a hopeless cause?
Well, look, and there's some cases, it could be, but 99% of the time, I say, if it was there once, there's the potential to create it again, if both parties are willing. It's funny, I'm writing this article right now at 17 ways to things to do when bored in your relationship, so kind of ties in. But the beginning, like, it's different for everyone. But the one thing that I say is really important in the space of intimacy is vulnerability. One thing I start with people is start with your desires. Like, what do you desire? And being willing to share, like, oh my God, I desire us to have romantic dinners. I desire us to talk and just about our innermost feelings, or even just about our day, and it just be about us for 15 minutes, you know, with no interruption. I desire like walks down, you know, in the neighborhood, holding your hand again, right? So even just like I do these small exercises, even something like this, when you're just looking into each other's eyes and holding each other's hands and giving 5 minutes to each person to say, what do you desire? And you're just holding them and being that container for them. They're just being seen, felt, and heard. And a lot of times when people just tap into that somatic experience, I'm going to say, it starts awakening. It starts feeling, wow, there is something here. We just forgot the tools. We forgot what resources fuel our garden. Like I do say, every relationship, you know, you have this love garden. You water it every day, but as much you water the weeds and you water the flowers. But if you don't regularly take out those weeds, they're both growing. So it's a matter of like, water your garden every day. Pardon?
Yeah. Sorry, go ahead. Keep going.
You froze. So I just say, as you water the garden, just always remember checking in with each other. You know, are you taking out the weeds? A relationship is effort, but doesn't have to be work, right? Like I always say, find the pleasure and play in the everyday. Even if it's something as simple as washing the dishes. What makes you feel sexy and alive again washing the dishes? Is it doing it in your underwear? Is it doing it with some music on? Is it doing it together, you know, where you did when maybe you first got married and he's washing or you're washing and he's drying? Like there's ways to say, okay, you help me do the dishes, you know, here's what's for you afterwards, right? Like there's just, you can take the simplest of things. And instead of saying what that person can do for me that I'm not getting, what can I create? What can I like use that energy, that life force energy of vitality to bring into this space without any expectation? And whether he responds or she responds or not, you're still creating the space. So it starts planting things. There's one story I'll share with you about a guy I just had this conversation with. And he was married for over, I think about 20 years. And we were just having this conversation. He goes, oh, my relationship's about a 7 out of 10, you know, but I know it's not greener on the other side, you know, but it kind of bugs me when my friends tell me, why are you still in the relationship, right? Like, why don't you leave? And I said to him, I go, I wouldn't ask you that. He goes, well, what would you ask me? I'd say, well, what can you do to make it a 10? He goes, oh. Right. I said, what are you doing to help make it a 10? And then he's like, And the next day was his birthday. So I said, okay, I'm going to give you an exercise to do with your wife, right? Tomorrow for your birthday. So he's like, okay. The next day came. I got this just other download. And I messaged him. I said, you want to do something real out of the box? Do this. I said, it's your birthday. Go get her flowers and tell her what a gift she is for, like I said, thank her for being the gift in your life every day for all these years. And secondly, tell her 3 things you genuinely appreciate, like from your heart, like whether it's simply being the mother of your child, supporting you in all your business endeavors and not getting in your way, or even if it's just thanks for riding the tide and choosing me over again. Whatever it is, pick 3 things and tell her them. And I said, and then after that, you can go into the exercise I gave you, right? So all he messaged me was, thanks, Tia, for the advice. The flowers were a hit. And in my head, I'm like, oh my God, what happened? I'm all excited. So I don't get to hear till a week later. He tells me, I said, so what happened? And then he's like, she cried. I go, yeah. Oh my God, sorry. But I said, what happened for you? And he goes, I felt my heart expand. Mm-hmm. And I was like, that's the magic. That's what you can create. So here's a situation where you talk about a stagnant, monotonous space, but you get to take initiative and you really get to empower that the way you choose. So.
And I love that you said that too, like, don't be attached to the outcome, because, you know, so many of the times we'll start that, you know, and we'll do the thing, like we'll buy the sexy lingerie, and we're like, look, I bought the same, and we don't get the response right away. We're like, well, that didn't work, screw that, he's an asshole. You know, he's clearly not interested, or it goes the other way. So, and it is kind of like you're doing it for you and for the relationship, but almost like being in the energy of just exploring, being curious, being creative, and just
being witnessed, allowing yourself to be witnessed in that, right? Another simple thing that's great to do is before bed is like, you know, 3 things you appreciate about each other. You know, it's such a simple thing, but being like, today, I appreciated this about you.
Well, I think we're going to do the holding hands thing. I like that. We have a lot of really awesome conversations about how we can support each other and what we're grateful for. I think we do a pretty big up job. And I really like this desire question, you know, like, what is it that you desire? And just, you know, it's kind of like you get to talk and I just get to listen, like purely for the intention.
Well, if you want to do like the whole piece of it, I'll tell you, like, here's a quick thing. You do love, fears, desires.
More effort.
Give us
Yes.
more things.
Do
this
your
isn't just crappy relationships. This is like this.
No, oh my God. If it's a good relationship, it deepens and it keeps things connecting and it keeps like going to the next level. There's an exercise where you can simply do, it's called In the Arms of Your Love. And you're just in the arms of your love, staring each other's eyes, just holding them and just saying, I love you. I appreciate you. I celebrate you. And that's it. And for 5 minutes, you're just looking in their eyes, just telling them this repeatedly. That in itself, like knowing that you're held physically while these words are coming at you is such a deepening, healing experience, especially because it goes back to being held as a child, knowing that you're in a safe container, knowing that you are loved. Like, so it sounds so basic, but on so many other layers, it's being received. So the love, fears, desires. So there's 3 questions. You sit with each other, you can hold hands, you can do the yum, like the stance where you're sitting on him, and the arms around. And, you know, it's simply, you look into each other's eyes, you start with 3 things you appreciate about each other, and then you say, okay, what do you desire? And they'll go on and allow them, and then just repeat the question, what do you desire? And it takes them in deeper. You do that for a minute, 2 minutes, then the other person takes a turn. Now, what you don't say any responses, no feedback, you just say thank you. You're just receiving, you're just being a container. Then you do it to the other person. Now, what do you desire? Same thing. Just hold the space, 1 to 2 minutes, you're just receiving and letting them share. Then you go into, what are you afraid of?
What are you afraid of?
What are you afraid of?
I love that you said no feedback. You know,
No.
Especially going back to that alpha thing, like we're always like, okay, well, when are we going to plan it in? Like we get right into the doing, and it's like this
is all about container of just giving and receiving and holding space. And then you go into the fears. And then at the end, you say, like, what do you love about me? And it's a minute, you're just receiving. And then you can just repeat it. What do you love about me? What do you love about me? And then you do the same thing back. And then from there, you can go anywhere, you know, like you do. And then you just do a held embrace to sink into each other, to really receive all of that. And allow it to take you wherever it takes you, whether it's in deeper discussion, whether it's in making love, whether it's, hey, this was just a real intimate connection in itself. Let's go about our day. That really filled me up. Thank you. Right?
So what do you do if you have a partner who's not willing? They're just totally shut down and they're just like, whatever, I'm too tired. I'm exhausted, busy, they're distracted, whatever. They're non-engaged. And I can definitely, you know, relate to this, and I hear this a lot, where people will say, well, my partner only comes to me when they want something.
Okay, so you're talking about one person being very interested in exploring deeper intimacy and the other person just being distracted and not. Okay.
Yeah, it's not open to it.
Only wants it if it's a result. Let me, you know, it needs to serve.
Or, oh, okay, I'll give you the duty sex or
Okay, So something like that, when it comes to the woman, I find it's really the softening and slowing down. Like for a woman that's just like, oh my God, I have to have sex. Like I just don't want it. I'm not into it. Like I know anytime I open up to anything, it just ends there, and I just don't like, I'm not into it. With that, it's a matter of like, that's where it's getting into your place of receiving. Just say, honey, for 15 minutes, I just want to massage your feet. Would you be willing to receive that? Nothing's, and just saying 15 minutes and blocking off that time. Like there's other exercises I do a lot that are very time maintained. So one, it's just about that. It's about learning to relax into pleasure without a result. So for a lot of these women who are
relaxing to pleasure without a result, because I can totally, in my past life when I was married, I definitely had that like rigid body that was like, oh my God, if he comes near me, he's gonna want something from me. And
yes.
Then you're like afraid to have any kind of contact, or you're like, no eye contact,
Yeah, where if think about being that person, if someone said, okay, hon, you had a long day, can I, do you feel like a hand massage or a foot massage? Would you like me to warm you up with a bath, read you some poetry, or just, play with your hair? You're going to go into this being like, hey, we're just doing 15 minutes. I don't have time for anything else, but I just want to know, would you be willing to receive that? Okay, maybe I'll try it, maybe I don't, and for the man, I find it's just more, again, it's the same thing, because again, they might feel they have a duty, or, and there's an expectation there. It works with the men too, but I find with the men, just like being like, so what does intimacy look like? What do you crave? What would be a relaxing evening for you that actually felt something out different from what we're doing now, that was connecting? And sometimes they don't even have the awareness to even identify anything. So I'm saying, so it's giving them ideas. Would you like me to warm you a bath? Would you like a foot massage? Would you like I'm going to say a half-hour penis massage? It's all about also for them relaxing into pleasure, right? And also really I find when both parties, like I'm already sensing, and those kind of dynamics, the nervous system is just real, like there's just heightened anxiety on both ends. So it's really about slowing things down. Like when you think you're going slow, slow it even further. And really the simple exercises like eye gazing, breath work exercises, things that bring simple connection. And you're starting at small increments, whether it's like even just, hey, just 5 minutes of connection, wherever it takes. Like I've done practices with people, and I do this work where I've had somebody on that other, I'm going to say that alpha side, and in 5 minutes, just no connection, nothing. It's okay. It's a starting point. Maybe in a week we do it again, and there's just a little bit more, right?
Yeah.
Was that helpful?
Yeah, I think so. And it's
So I'm going to jump in here a little bit. It's because all the ideas, right? So this is like amazing, like stuff that I like, actionable things like I can start doing today if I want to, right? If I want to help, and whether I've got a responsive partner or a non-responsive partner. So while I'm doing this, let's just say I'm committed, and I'm going to start asking if she wants a foot rub, or if I can rub her hands or play with her hair, and start to do these things. While that's going on, what unlearning do I now need to be doing? Like, what do I need to be releasing attachment from, or how am I treating myself at that? And that may tie back to some of the stuff from the beginning, but I want to just get some clarity around that, because that's, what we're about with the Unlearning Project. There's stuff that we do. Yes. Some things that we get to learn. And there's also like,
what programs do we start getting rid of?
So for the person doing or asking, sorry, go on.
I was going to say, how long do I have to rub fucking feet, right, before something really starts to happen?
After massages, that's it.
Okay. So for one, I would say noticing is such a key thing. So if you're having that reaction, right, you're attaching to an outcome, right?
Say that one more time. It cut out. I'm sorry.
So when you're having that reaction, it's the noticing, because you're attaching to an outcome.
Yep.
Right? So the unlearning for you, like, so even a simple another exercise. So I even do this with my daughter, because I'm not in a partnership, and this is one where I massage her feet and I don't do anything until she directs me. Mom, put pressure on the balls of my feet, you use your thumbs. Mom, move here and do this. Mom, go to the top of my feet. Mom. And that's also when her learning to have a voice of what she wants, getting to know her body, being able to communicate it. She had no problem. So I'm like, hun, when she's 12 years old, I go, when you need to be in a relationship, you'll have no problem. But the thing is, I had to notice myself, because in my head, I'm like, oh, am I doing it right? Am I putting enough pressure? Is she liking it?
Yeah.
Right?
Voices are crazy.
So the unlearning for me is, can I just stay in unattachment and just allow myself to be guided? Right? And not expecting the praise, not expecting a result.
Mm-hmm.
So that for us, even simple exercises like this are wonderful muscle trainers for the unlearning of attachment, because the more and more we let go of results and we let go of attachment, we actually expand into bigger possibilities, because our results right now are limited to the mind of what we know and have experienced already. When you actually let go of that, you can actually go beyond that.
And that is so key. I mean, like you use the example of your daughter. I think a lot of people can relate that, even definitely in the bedroom, with that noise going on in the back of your head. Like, am I doing this right? When is he gonna come? When is she gonna come? What's happening, right? And like all this stuff, is he looking at me funny? And it's just crazy the amount of chatter that robs you from what you said earlier, was just being in the like pleasure of the experience. Like, and we were just in Sedona, and I said that a few times, but it was like this whole experience for me in Sedona, not about sexual that time, but it was really just about experiencing full pleasure and giving myself permission to just experience it and be 100% okay with, like, that's what I get to do. I get to just be in the pleasure and love it and relish it. And it was like, you know, you're savoring it, and so it's radical presence. I think it's something that's so rare in relationships, and definitely
even practicing that in the everyday, when you're going for a walk and you're really taking in this sensory experience of the air, the flowers, people walking by, or the sounds. You're practicing building the sensory capacity and tolerance within our own system, which then translates into deeper intimacy connection. Like, even when you eat a strawberry or food and you're just like, you're smelling it and you're really tasting it and you're letting it linger in your mouth. That in itself is like, again, you're slowing down, you're opening, you're not attached to, okay, let me fill myself up, I'm hungry, let me, get, again, a result, right? So the more you start practicing in every part of your life, this letting go, it's an expansion. Like another quick thing I'll tell you is, like, working towards your 10 spot. So whether it's in intimacy, whether it's in life, like, okay, on a scale of a pleasure scale, 0 to 10, what was I today? Or what was this experience? Or what was this conversation? Maybe it was a 5, maybe it was a 7. Okay, what could I have done differently to bring it closer to a 10? What could we have done to bring it closer to a 10?
So one thing that's coming up and I love that question, and I love the question that you asked the man too about, oh, it's a 7 out of 10, instead of going, well, what would make it a 10? You're saying, what are you doing to make it a 10? I love that question. One of the things that's coming up, because, a lot of the work I do is about helping people, yes, online programs of the past, and really step into their power. And so what I've found is this lack of boundaries that we have, physical, emotional boundaries in relationship. And I think that's where a lot of the doubt, and I went through this a lot too, like, I didn't understand, like, what's okay physically, like in terms of touching, when or not, and emotionally, when is it okay to come in or out of my space? And so therefore, this idea of like, well, I always just don't be attached, like, just go free flow and be okay with it. But then innately I was like, that doesn't feel good. Do you know what I'm saying? So where's the line there? Like, how do we deal with that when someone has that program where they're just kind of feeling like, well, I just get walked over all the time and I don't feel respected, but then I'm always trying to be open and available and pleasure, like, how do you toe that line? Like, where do you go?
There's a, well, and that's a very good question. For me, the word safety comes up, like where, where's the space of safety to explore that? And boundaries, we think it's something on the outside of what we want other people to do, but it's really a container of our own standard of excellence, of how we hold our own life. And so it could be, my standards are, I like to have open, honest communication. Here's how I show up in that. Are you willing to meet me? Or when this happens, you might see me show up like this. Do I have your permission to do that? Or here's how I need you to show up for me. If you can't do that, please leave the room, please stop, or please, like also if it's intimately, look, I'm open to exploring things intimately, but I have a tendency to people please. And I want to make sure I don't fall into that when we're sexual, let's say. So can we have a safe word when I know I'm going there, that we pause, right? So something like that, like it's helping her honor her own space that she's working through of being, let's say, a people pleaser. And it's also putting a boundary to say, I don't want you to take advantage of that. I don't want you to like fuel that part of me, because that's a space I'm looking to recondition. So where can we meet each other in that? Right?
Yeah, I love that idea of safety and having the safe word, because, I've seen this in so many of the women I've worked with. And again, I'm sure it's an issue that comes up for a lot of men as well. I think, and maybe more with women. I don't know about the safety and boundaries, but, because you're like, there's this fear that if I put down the boundary, or I'm like, I'm not okay with that because I desire more, then that'll create even more of a gap.
Well, but then it's also like, when I say in relationships, I say when I'm dating people, for me, I say, I'm not here to impress you. I'm here to reveal myself to you. Mm-hmm. And if that aligns, wonderful. And if it doesn't, it's wonderful too, because I trust the higher good of the more clarity and the more connection we have to ourselves, the more confidence we have, the more courage we have to say, this is what I like. This is what I don't like. It's not a right or wrong, but this is what, my standards of excellence in my world requires at this time. I invite you to meet me. I invite you to be on your own journey and meet each other. What can that look like? But I'm not going to compromise, because at the end, especially for women, I relate to you when they say, oh, I don't want to make it worse or whatever. But the thing is, when you bring it to the forefront saying, I'm not fulfilled, I am not this, I'm bringing it up because I am so invested. I'm bringing it up because I want to create a new reality around that. I'm bringing it up because I want this space to be safe for us to explore that together and co-create that solution.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I like that idea of co-creating. That's so nice. I think so much is under the surface that, we talk so much about awareness, like the first step is just becoming, we talk about becoming the observer. I know that you put it, noticing was the word that you used, right? Just being able to notice. And a lot of times, if someone hasn't been doing this work, especially, and it's always, no matter how much work you do, it's, I think you start to notice things faster because you're now training yourself to listen to your body's wisdom and pay attention to the congestion in your head or your heart or, low vibration or whatever. There's a lot of people who haven't been in that practice, and this is like really, really new. And so they don't have that awareness or that muscle of developing like the noticing yet. So what are some of the things that you found? Like one of the things I wrote down that you had was on your bio. You said like, it's by looking at how we were raised around money, power, conflict, and how that plays out in our relationships. And so I was curious, are there any like themes? I'm sure there are, the different variations of the same underlying like core beliefs that, we call it the program that people have been exposed to, maybe in even these three areas, money, power, and conflict, and how they play out in relationship. Like even the money one, because money and love are so closely tied together.
Yes, yes. And actually, money in itself is a feminine energy. So it's interesting when you understand that and work with it. And when you're forcing or trying to like push it to happen, how you're in a patriarch, like in a resistance, right? Whereas money is flow, it's currency, it's feminine. And when you go with that ease and grace of, I can like call it in, I can work with it in a different way. Like you just can develop such a different relationship to the harmony of it.
I love that. I'm taking notes on that. Y'all take notes on that, what you just said. Money is feminine energy. You gotta let us know.
Yes, yes. And you just start having a different relationship with it when you understand it as such, or you choose to accept it as such. But money and yes, money and sex, there's so much around that. Like a lot of people, when I work with them on their intimate power and really harnessing that energy into their full potential, it just automatically translates into different successes in their work, in their business, in their money. And I'm sure vice versa, right? There's aspects that do. And you're asking, is there a core conditioning that I see as a pattern that plays out in adult?
Yeah, and I find like a lot of times it's like the similar beliefs are playing out, but they really start to show up, you know. And so I'm hearing kind of like if you grew up in an environment where money was very much like forced, or I don't know, right? Like, and I don't want to be.
Well, a lot of pieces, yeah, like, and look, you can have the environment and then you can have how you interpret the environment as a child, you know, given if it was money was always like lack or, you know, had to be struggle to earn or whatever. The core piece I see under that plays out in different ways comes out to be control, right? So, or lack of confidence. Also people let's say, I see it the other way. It's not just about the lack of money or the struggles or the things around that category. To me, I also just see as the playing out of the underlying root cause of lack of confidence, disconnection, chasing something on the outside that you're trying to cover up on the inside. So even when people talk to me about money issues, I'm like, okay, let's talk about your childhood. Let's talk about how you were treated, how you experienced the masculine and feminine, how you experienced power, how conflict and dynamics were interpreted by you, because that plays out to your worth, your value, your deservingness. And those are the pieces when you work through start to have a greater impact on money, financial space, in my experience. Did I answer that?
I always say, like, whatever's core, you know, at the root, whatever that seed was planted, it just looks for different outlets to keep showing up in our life until we finally, you know, so we may struggle in our health for a really long time when we think like, oh, there's not enough time to exercise, or not enough, you know, I'm not worthy enough to do this for myself because that's selfish, you know, and like people are struggling with their health. And then it seems like when they sort of navigate that area, it's interesting how it starts to creep up in other areas. It's like that core belief hasn't fully, we've gotten some momentum, but then all of a sudden it tries to show up in your relationship or in your money. And it's really getting to that core thing and going, okay, yeah, I see this old program trying to show up, and I'm very fully aware of what it is, you know, as it starts to try to creep into these other areas and we dissolve it, the more we just.
And it will show up in places to test what are you most responsive to, right?
Yeah.
Like it might show up in relationship because that's a stronger trigger for you to react to versus money, or it might show up in money because you're so attached to the material space versus the intimate. So it will like that root underlying issue will play out in different ways until it gets the charge that gets you to respond.
That's so good. I like that. What do you say?
I'm just taking so many notes over here. That's all.
It's so true though, because it's like it keeps coming at you where you have the attachment still, right? And then you're like, oh, you know, and until you go back to the old ways. And then it's funny because once you start doing the work on this, like your tolerance threshold gets really low. I have found in my own work that as I start to up level my worth and get rid of those old stories, you know, and step more and more into my power and set more boundaries with myself, which is an ongoing process, by the way. I'm still like, oh, I got so much work to do in this area. But the tolerance level for it showing up starts to really get, like, you don't have a lot of tolerance. So you experience more pain, if that makes sense,
Yeah.
right? Like, you know, I've felt that way. A lot of my clients have said, it's like, why? Like, it's almost like before we were in the dark and all of a sudden we're aware and you're like, everyone is disrespecting me. What's going on? You know, like,
well, yeah, you're more
loves
attuned to it, but you also go through it faster. Like you don't sink as deep. You don't stay as long. You don't like dwell on it as much. So look, we're all enlightened beings. We already are. We're here to have the human experience. And the more we allow ourselves to have that human experience, we're more able just to identify, oh, yeah, I'm in, like, our lives, our relationships, money, like all the dynamics that hit us. It's like seasons. Like, oh, this month it's money that's hitting me. Next month it's relationship. Next month it's my health. It's in the slowest seasons of things showing up in a way we'll respond to them to continue evolving to our wholeness and full acceptance of our complete being, right?
Yes, absolutely. And that's you know, it's interesting as we're kind of, you know, bringing this we're broaching an hour at this point, and we talked about so many things. One thing that's been coming through a lot for me is you've been talking, Tia, and Christina's been talking this, and we've been talking about this prior to this idea that the achievement model is busted. Like that I must achieve, right? So I must rub feet X number of times in order to get laid, right? That becomes like the thing, right? Or in order to have sex or create, it's not always about like, how well do I get to know myself and how well do I get to work through, or how much do I get to work through some of these things at a self level, right? Trusting that, you know, the relationship will show up. And I'm getting a little bit off target, so I want to get back to this achievement thing. So much of what we're talking about here is not about like, how much do I have to do in order to receive? And that's what I love about a lot of what we're saying. It's not about like, I've got to do X. In fact, as you're talking about just a few minutes ago, like the environment of it's sometimes it's the environment, sometimes it's how you interpret the environment that can lead to, you know, the need for control, the need for different things. And so I was just like, I was reflecting on that. I'm like, interesting. Like, so what was my interpretation of my environment? I wrote down, you know, I'm loved. I'm thinking about as a child, right? Which today is just like, I'm loved. People, you know, give me money for appreciation for the work that I do or whatever. But I'm loved as long as I have worked really hard and kept working until I get recognition.
You know, it's so funny. Right before you said that, I was going to say you are a people pleaser.
Yeah.
Right before you said it, I could read that. Yes.
Yeah, 100%. I mean, that was the vast majority of my last 15 years was just people pleasing, trying to keep everybody happy. Today, to this day, it's still something that comes through because it's something that's probably it's my biggest trigger, right? Is letting someone down. Mm-hmm. Hands down, like that is my number one trigger that I'm continuing to do the unlearning stuff on.
So
yeah.
If I can comment to that, one thing I read, because that was me growing up a lot as well, so I can relate to, and that's why it's easy for me to feel into other people pleasers, because I've been one of them. And one thing I read that really stuck with me is when we're people pleasing, we're actually manipulators, because we're not living in our true essence. We're not being authentic, and we're not serving people. So when what comes up in our trigger of like, oh, I want to please them, I want to make them happy, asking, am I serving them more by just letting go, by not doing?
Yeah, that's a big old kick to the nuts right there.
It's a hard thing for people to listen to. Like, you're actually manipulating what?
No, like I'm saying it because it struck a chord with me, because we think we're doing the opposite of trying to do so much, but we actually are manipulating because they want us to like us, and we're not being truly who we are.
Yeah, and disempowering really the other person.
And
from
fooling them, yeah, like from their potential, from their capabilities, from dealing with the situation authentically, to even saying, hey, you got the capability, I don't need to please you, because I trust our relationship is strong enough to sustain whatever truth is here. And I'm holding on to that confidence. And if it doesn't, then that's also truth as well, which serves both of us again.
Yeah, it's so true. And it's hard. I have a couple of people going through this process right now with me, and it's a challenge to come to that realization. It's very, I remember it's very humbling to come to that place where you're like, oh my gosh, like that doesn't seem like that was my intention, and yet it is exactly what is happening, right? And so it's such a beautiful place once we have awareness around that, for sure.
Mm-hmm.
And then when you practice saying no more, like just saying, hey, people, like I'm practicing saying no, so just love me up in it, if you can. And if you can, it's totally okay. And when you truly play with that no place, like even in the bedroom, it's another beautiful place to practice saying no. And just knowing that you can still hold each other. You can still just look into each other's eyes, pause for however long that no needs to be. Letting somebody feel the power of their no, to say, you can say no anytime and I'm still here. Like that is also huge to play with.
Yeah. Talk about safety.
Yeah.
That isn't going to turn their back on you if you say no.
Like, oh my God, he didn't, they didn't get it. They're going to go somewhere. Oh, whatever, knowing that you said no and you're still here.
And that takes a level of maturity and awareness on both partners too, like to be intentional about this. And like this really has a lot, around self-awareness and communication.
Actually, you know what? You hit a word key on the head that I say for people, that's huge. And it's not even what it's not the skill, it's not the technique, it's not this, it's the intention. You go into anything with intention alone and have no other tool, it is profoundly magical. So even if I don't know what I'm going to say, I don't know what I'm going to do, hold the intention of what you want that result and outcome to be, and just watch it unfold.
Well, so good, because intention is it's energy, right? And we can always feel the energy. We're so energetic beings, so we can just feel where someone's coming from. So that's so much more powerful than what comes out of.
And then we all have it. You don't even need to get it from anywhere. Like, it's talk about empowerment to the core. Like you let people just practice intention. I don't care what you say, show up here and just feel it from your heart, where you want to come in from.
Yeah. So I love to have these discussions, and there's so much great stuff here. And I also really love to give people like things that to really, takeaways that they're like, yeah, I can actually like really lean into this right now. So what would you say to someone who is really at a place where they've wanting to call in their soulmate, wanting to call in their ideal partner, right? And maybe they're just like searching around, they're dating, they're on whatever, and it's just not happening for them. Where would you tell them, like, top 3 pieces of advice or places to start?
Oh, it's funny because this is so where I am, right? And you know what? I just live the reality as if you already have it. Like I have, let's say Friday night's my date night. Whether there's somebody in my life or not, I still do a date night. I put on a dress. I make myself a romantic dinner. I candlelight. I dance. I do a hot bath. Like, it's my date night. So I've already created the space of it, that it's there. I put myself in communities where it's not about, oh, where am I going to find what? It's about creating. Like, I like to hang around like-minded people. I like entrepreneurial space. I love adventure, or I love this. What are the places that I can interact and be in my own natural expression to exercise that energy? And that all automatically even just starts calling it in. I really do, like, I come back to the self-care and being with yourself, because the more you get to learn about yourself, it just really starts, you start getting more confident, you start getting more empowered, you start getting more clear, you start being like more in relationship to your boundaries of what you're willing to tolerate or not. Like, I know for me, okay, I want to create a certain type of relationship in my life that's connected, that's emotionally mature, that a person's doing their own work on their own path, that these things. So now I know for me, like, there's 5 core values I have. So I'd say for somebody, establish what your 5 core values are and don't settle for anything less.
Oh my
And
gosh.
if you just say, but I just say, a person may come in being like, oh, he's cute and he's got this and he's got 3 of them. I'm like, no, you don't have the 5. No, because it's not going to work out sooner or later. So don't waste my time. Like, I've been single for a long time and I'm totally okay with that, because I'm like, my time, my energy, and my effort is important. And I want to make sure that I honor myself enough to only give it to the space that meets me there.
Yes.
For that.
I can so relate to that. And I remember when I was getting like super clear, I think, part of it is that really releasing the attachment too, of how you said, I love that piece. 2 things that you said that really stuck out. Obviously the first 3 are great, creating the space, creating the container. Like, I always say, like, if you're inviting somebody into your house and you don't have the space for them on your schedule, or in your home, or your house has all your exes stuff, or your heart has all your exes baggage, and you're like, what? There's no space for the new person. But this idea of learning to like getting really clear on the values and not settling. I think for me it was like getting to a point where I was totally okay being on my own, unless, like, I got to the point where I was like, I will not, period, date anyone else. I will be alone unless this man shows up that is like this, because I had gone through so many iterations of trying to fit a circle into a square or whatever, going, well, I can change him. Like, he's good. I'm like, just give me a couple months and I will get that sucker.
You can't change those. What you see is what's there 3 weeks from now, 10 months from now. But what's fascinating, what I want to really celebrate for you is the moment, like, you were okay with it. And the moment you were okay with it and living your life, that it is abundant and full and, and gratifying in all these ways, it showed up.
And I'm really blessed, and thank you. It showed up really quickly for me, but I was really in a place where I was like, I don't care. I'm good. Like, it's a hell no. If it's not a hell yes, it's a hell no. And I was like, that's it. And like you said it earlier, as you said, getting really crystal clear. I forget exactly what you said, but getting super clear and connected to yourself, right? Get really clear and get really connected. And I think like that's the magic, is when we're really connected to our heart. And for me, that's God or source, divine, whatever, of truth. And then you're crystal clear. It's very easy to see what's not.
I say people that are, in the dating space, are not in a committed relationship, right? Use the time to do your work, right? Use the time to work on you, because that's just going to elevate everything else around you.
So here's a question I get a lot when I'm doing work with clients, and I'm curious what your answer is, because I know my answer. So I'll get people that'll say, all right, Christine, while I'm waiting for my queen to show up, is it cool if I just kind of like sleep around and go out and take women out, even though I know like they're not the one, but like until she shows up or until he shows up? Well, I'm waiting for my king, but in the meantime, I'm going to like play around with the boy next door, or and yes. So what say she, relationship and sex coach, on this approach?
Listen, my instinctive response is like, if you're doing that, you're still not making the room. You're also taking in that energy of, I'm going to say you're looking for gourmet sex and you're settling for junk food sex, right? So if that's what you want to keep doing and that works for you, then just know what you're doing with the clarity around it. Yeah. But if you're really looking to create that, really create it, right? It's like an athlete training for a marathon. And they're like, well, I'm just going to have junk food on these 2 days till the day of the marathon. Or I'm going to eat like this and do this. Well, will that get you the result? No. Right. So it might get you halfway, or it might get you part of it. And it's different. Look, there's other dynamics at play here, because there could be people that are very authentic and tell people, look, I'm looking for this certain type of relationship. You're not it. This feels like this can serve this part to allow me to explore parts of my sexuality or parts of a dynamic. I'm looking to grow and evolve, but this isn't that part. Are you okay with that? There's dynamics like that. I say, okay, that could be serving and mature and mutually agreeable on, because there's still a piece that's still developing while that, but it's also
muddy.
well, it's muddy, but then you need to have very clear boundaries of what that is. Like, because there could be very clear lines about that. I've seen that in some relationships. Do I think it's, like in my sense, I'm like, go all in. If you're looking to create it, really create it and explore the relationships that can offer that standard of excellence. And I love how you express, like, you being a queen and you being a king, because I do believe that we do need to live in the throne of our queen and kingdom. And this is something, when we allow ourselves to taste and live in that flavor, and we live in our queen or king, it allows our partner to live more in their regal essence of that space.
Good word.
Regal.
Tell me,
What's that?
what was your response to the people that ask you that question? A hell no?
Very similar. I'm really big on, if you're calling in a queen, but you're still inviting all these maids and princesses into your house, is a queen going to be attracted
No.
to that?
And also,
right?
you're taking in that energy, like every person you have sex with, like you're taking in that energy of them plus the layers to bring that in. And then it's like, if you're not doing the work of constantly cleaning that out or cleansing that space, you're just adding that upon. And then you're saying, with all this, residue, let me call in my queen or king.
Yeah, no. And that's the second piece I always nail in. Like, the energy thing is like massive. It's such a sacred act, at least for me. So it's and I made definitely my share of mistakes in the past where I haven't been in that space, and it's just always been a hot mess. So I haven't seen it really being successful. But yeah, I was interested to hear what someone else had to say on that, because I don't usually save my response. I'll ask some questions and they'll come up with their own answer, and I think somehow they're looking for permission that it's okay, but really what they're doing is they know inside what the answer.
Well, and it's also, I would explore with them, like, what is this part providing you? What is it masking? Like, if it's loneliness, if it's need for power, is if it needs for, it feels connection, like underlying, like, let's explore what you're really looking for, what it's serving, because let's look at healthier ways potentially that can be addressed, right? Because there's something underneath that.
Yeah. It's
and
like
if you go
like binge eating,
yeah, right.
Absolutely. So Tia, if we want to link some things up and help people get in touch with you, or they're listening to this and they're like, okay, I want more, where should they go?
Well, I have my website that's being revamped right now, so it just has a landing page, which is tiaevagelou.com, but my email would probably be best right now, which is Tia, TIA, at TIAEVAGELOU.com.
Okay.
We will put that in the show notes for sure. And then, so you coach people. Tell us what you're up to. Like, you're obviously a coach, so that's what you've got. Like, that's your primary thing you've got going. What's your focus right now?
Right now is just working with, a few handful of clients for the year, like just really diving deep into some transformational, life integration around their sexuality and their intimate power, and really transforming parts of their lives. And a lot of these people that I work with is, there's a lot at risk, whether it's, divorce, separation, financial loss or gain, as a result of not investing in this aspect of their lives. I'm working on potentially putting together some kind of mastermind or community group, because I want a space where people, like, let's say, and I'm still brainstorming this out, but I'm getting inquiry of a space where people could come just to ask questions, and whether it's a certain theme of the week or the month, or just, hey, let's have, intimate conversations about sexuality around alpha individuals. And what does that look like? So there's a few things in the space that I'm looking to create with that, but nothing that's been concrete yet. So right now the core is my coaching.
Great. I'm really, really pleased at just like how in alignment, like what Christine and I are doing with the School of Unlearning and the Unlearning Project really is with where you're at and what you're creating with your coaching and just your work of knowledge, the body of knowledge that you have around this, because it really does. I mean, we've all been like as we define our target audience around this podcast, like School of Unlearning, et cetera, like it's those people who probably are in an entrepreneurship or leadership role, high levels of responsibility, lots at risk. But they bought the books, they've been to the conferences, they've done all the things and gone through all the stuff, still having the same problems, right? So it really is somatic. And so what are the things that we can, how do we unlearn those early childhood patterns, those things that keep coming up, and now they just manifest today as relationships, they manifest as issues in business, they manifest as cash flow, they issues, or sometimes they manifest as cash flow positive, right? Depends on your issues. But it's this is really, we're super in alignment with where you're at. It's not just like, I do this and I get X results, which is what everybody else is teaching. So I really appreciate your perspective.
And I'm super excited to, get you involved in some other things, either in our community doing, as we dive into the relationship series, or even possibly at a live event, because this is something we're super passionate about. It keeps showing up, and diving even further into this subject and giving people just a safe place to have these conversations, like you said, because it kind of seems to be a conversation people only have after a few drinks.
Yes.
Usually it always end up the way you want. So I'm really glad we had this time together.
Oh my God, me too. And there's just a real, oh my God, deep love in my heart for what you guys are doing around the unlearning of who we are, and also the remembering of who we truly are.
Yes.
So thank you for allowing me to have this space to contribute to it in this capacity and this time together. It was really a true joy being here with you.
Awesome.
Got it. Thank you.
Thanks, Tia.